Hello again. This is round two of this video. The first one um, completely messed up. So we are going to do this again. Hi there, I'm Pilgrim, and today I want to talk to you about my Dirgecaster build in Path of Exile 3.10 Delirium. So we're going to break this down into a couple of different parts. The first part is going to be about the league itself, trading, what I think about the new cluster jewels, the league mechanic, um, all of that sort of stuff. And then I'm going to do a review / guide for the Dirgecaster itself at the end, before doing like a wrap up. So let's get this started. So what do I think about the league in general at the start? So to start the league was piss poor. It was extremely rippy and I nearly quit from frustration. I died around 200 times on my first character before I'd even started mapping, and it's amazing that I even finished like the campaign. Multiple times I did just rage quit. I just ulted F4. I was just so annoyed and actually came back like a day later. But now it is significantly improved. So they have removed things like shotgunning and excessive debuffs. Although there is one debuff, which is the slowing one, which is still pretty obnoxious, and I don't think they changed it at all. But it just kind of grinds you to a hole, and it's really off-putting. Although not very, at least not for this build, not very rippy in and of itself. You have about a second and a half of reaction time, which is usually enough to try and do a dash or a leap slam out. So yeah, the mechanic itself, I actually really like. I like Delirium. Like quite a few people on Reddit, I am also one of those people who does not like the timer and sees no reason for it to be there. They consistently said that they wanted to slow down the league. In fact, even in, I'm pretty certain in like this last AMA or the one before it, they specifically said they wanted to slow it down, and they introduced things to slow down people who were zooming about the place. But putting a timer on it is completely the opposite of that. So they're a bit all over the place. By comparison, if you're able to get a large number of Delirium orbs, you'll have a lot of fun because permanent Delirium is very enjoyable. And there's no worrying about you not being able to clear the entire map or kill a boss while still on the effects. The type itself also just ruins layouts. There are some maps that are really, really good, like Beach, but there are some that are really, really awful, like Wharf. Giving you an example of like a tier 1, so we're on the same ballpark, everybody can get to these things. And the difference is tremendous, and I hate it. A lot of people hate it. But really, that's the only thing to complain about now, is just that stupid timer. but generally positive. Cluster jewels are really good, broken, and I see one of several big changes happening with these. Certainly there's things that I want to happen, which are obviously I would simply like this idea to get spread around. Hopefully, I mean, not likely, but hopefully GGG will see this and will take these suggestions under advisement. But let's get with how they are currently. So currently they are obviously broken. People like to say, oh, but you can use all of your health passives to put into these jewels instead. And that's how you balance it out by making yourself super glass cannon, as if somehow that's supposed to fix what is already an inherent issue already. Glass cannoning. If you can kill the enemy before they can hurt you, what does it matter if you have life or defenses? It simply doesn't. So that is a big issue, because that isn't what happens. What happens is people get these cluster jewels as well as cluster jewels that also have defenses on them. They have simply changed the type of defense. Before we like going for max resist and as much life as possible. I feel like now it's either energy shield um, or block. Like you can get a fuck ton of block now, and not just like attack damage, but from ranged attacks, from spell attacks. It's just fucking everywhere, and I don't think that's a great way to go. Like before, if you wanted to go block, you would have to have stuff on the tree and gear. Now it's just the tree, which means anybody could have block, like max block, spell block, range block, you name it. It's just really stupid, and they need to curb that. Couple of ways that they could do this. Pretty much every single suggestion I have um, would actually solve that issue because fundamentally, the first thing that happens is every single cluster um, should be limited to one. So a single large, a single medium, and a single small. It's still build defining. You can get a ridiculous amount of stuff from a cluster jewel, and a very few amount of passives can then save a huge amount on the tree. As a result, I see things like voices probably going up in price if that were to happen. And I think this is the most like obvious thing, like just limit every single cluster size to one. And yeah, just start with that. Another thing is they wanted to rework ascendancies. So what if we simply replaced our current ascendancies, which are already hard to balance anyway, and then just replaced them with cluster jewels? So this also goes along with like the whole lab change as well. Like they want to completely remove and I say remove, but completely change lab and how to get your ascendancy points, as in they want to move them away from each other. My preferred option here would actually be to have ascendancy points come from the mapping system only, where they act like god powers. So like you kill a specific god in the tree, and you get um, an additional buff on one of your god powers. Um, that is a system that works absolutely fine. Nothing wrong with that. It's achievable. It forces people to try and grow their atlas, which is really good. And there is also plenty of space left over. Um, like currently, we have what is it, about 10 god powers, like 4 big, 6 small. With I think that's correct. It might be 12 in total, like 8 small, but doesn't really matter. And then each one has 3. Okay, but we like 3 extra stuff. But there are now like 154 maps. And being that there are multiple tiers, it's potentially possible that you could get um, points at additional tier levels. Like, I don't think you would need to do that. I'm just saying that if we start putting all of this sort of stuff in maps, it would get quite bloated. But another option would be to also put it within certain tiers. Also give them more of a reason to tiers as well. At the moment, there really isn't. Like you just do the same map, but eventually it becomes a higher level. Like, but there's nothing like all of the unlocks are just at max tier, which certainly for ascendancy points, you don't want everything at max tier. That wouldn't be feasible. So you get some points that were available at tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. Even if it's just like the first completed map of each tier, you'd get an ascendancy point, just a single ascendancy point. But also, like going into this, what if, as I said, we replace ascendancies altogether with cluster jewels? So that's the way that they're implemented. Instead of the size of the tree, where it's taken valuable passives from defenses, what if we removed ascendancies, cobbled that all into the cluster jewels, okay, and then had the ability to have one large cluster jewel into a medium, into a small, and then uh, into yeah, and then this itself would be like build defining. So like at the moment, let's take Berserker, okay, my current character, and as we know, typically in an ascendancy, you get a skill or a number of skills, and then you have an upgraded version of that corresponds with it, that works really well. Well, what if we had the similar thing for cluster jewels, and then we put each major one in a cluster? Okay, so taking Rage, okay, let's just say we put that in the large cluster jewel. We would then have the upgraded Rage that triples the effects in the medium. And then it then gives us like something extra that we could add to the Rage mechanic, because it's pretty bare, but it's really fun. That can go in the small jewel. Okay, so something really, really potent in the small jewel. This means that gone are the days where you would have to choose a character to get a certain ascendancy. Now every character will still default to where you want it to be on the tree, and you could have any ascendancy you wanted, and you can mix and match. So a bit like Scion, but a bit more open. So let's just say you had a Berserker large jewel, and a gladiator medium, and an elementalist small, um, giving you far more build diversity, uh, and allowing for things that simply aren't possible now. So, for example, again, Dirgecaster is a good example here. I'm struggling already to make a elemental cycloner for a marauder, because I have to get a lot of defenses, but I also have to travel across the other side of the tree, and that's really difficult. And as you can see in my passive tree that I'm going to show a bit later, it's um, it's meant that I've basically had to cut health nodes from the tree that I normally wouldn't do, and it's really awkward to see it like that. And what you could have at this point is, you know, you could have your berserker stuff in the large and the medium, but you could take this small jewel and you could use something like elementalist or um, one of the ranger ones, which helps with like damage conversion stuff, like cold damage conversion, and it would actually plug that hole, which would be quite nice. But obviously, this is just one example, but I can see this happening with many, many, many different types of builds. And the fact that these would still be like special passive points, these would still be ascendancy points, um, it wouldn't detract from the rest of your main tree. Um, and in fact, we could actually get more of them, which is quite nice. My recommendation is probably around um, 15. So that would be the cost of the maxing out a large, medium, and small cluster jewel in their smallest format. Um, and yeah, like I really want that to happen. It seems a very elegant way, in my opinion, of dealing with lab ascendancies and cluster jewels all in one go. Uh, so yeah. Um, okay, trading this league. Trading for me was absolutely fine, um, because obviously it's a build that not many people would ever play or ever think to play. Although hopefully that will change because it's clearly like pretty good, I think anyway. Um, and certainly very cheap now. So hopefully it becomes a hit, but who knows. The the rest of the community though, oh well, I say the rest, a very small subset were obviously very vocal and annoyed. Um, Personally, I don't feel any sympathy. They exploited a broken system that was clearly broken and wasn't intended that way. And the fact that you lost a load of money, I don't care. Um, quite frankly, if you are capable of getting to that sort of currency anyway, you don't care or shouldn't be caring about making a whole new build or changing the build slightly. I mean, just to be clear, the build itself is fine. Like, it was nerfed, but in its nerf state, you can still see Reddit posts where people are killing Cirrus max level um, in seconds, like without even going to like the next phase. So like I don't care. You shouldn't care if you're watching this. Um, and the only people that I would feel sympathy for at that point were just like new players who got a lucky mirror drop and then spent a load of currency on what the community said was really fun at the time, um, because they didn't know any better and it was just pure luck. Um, and they obviously can't get that money back. But for the vast majority of people who did it, kind of a shame on you because you did exploit it. It amazes me that you have the balls to bitch and complain. So, you know, downvote me if you want, but I don't fucking care. My playtime this league, obviously, the beard you can probably see, we're under lockdown, so I currently do not have a job, so I've spent probably well about 80 hours in the last 2 weeks. So says Steam, which is far more than I would normally do. 20 hours was actually on the first character, who the one where I basically nearly quit over. That's how long it took me to actually finish Act 10. That's how bad it was. And the rest of that is just on this character. So 60 hours on this character. Initially struggling when I went into maps, but then huge leaps and bounds to the point where we're now at a potential of 2.6 million if I use Blood Stance, but 2.15 million if I'm just using my normal clearing sand stance. Is that it? Stone stance? The more area. So yeah, no, I've played a lot. So clearly the league is keeping me engaged. The last time I spent this amount of time was on Breach, so that's good. Breach is one of my favorites. This is now one of my favorites, Delirium, in its fixed state. So Breach, Abyss, Delirium. I also like Betrayal again after they fixed all of the rippy stuff at the beginning. Is there another one? Is there a fifth one I like? I don't know. What you see before you isn't bad, like the tower defense one. But I think it could be improved a lot. Namely in like towers. Like towers could be improved. But yeah, it's definitely up there. Like this league is definitely one of the better ones in my opinion. And I've had just a ton of fun with this league and this character. Excuse me. Oh, right. Let's get on to the actual character. Oh, I just noticed that we're actually not doing any music. I'm just going to turn the ambient on. Hopefully that's going to be a little bit better. Although tell me which one you prefer, if you like the ambient or you like the no sound. I'm very much hoping that this is a good sound for ambient, like the volume. In my headphones it sounds okay. So okay, so the build, yes, the Dirgecaster. It is a Marauder Berserker that has war cries, using a very cool axe, which doesn't get nearly enough attention, and that is the Debeon's Dirge. It has a huge amount of flat, cold damage, and then gives you 150% extra elemental damage when you war cry. So it is a elemental build, obviously, and it's also Cyclone, but you can also do this as a Ice Crash. I haven't tried that, but it would make this fully elemental. At the moment, it's a little bit of physical, which is frustrating as hell because it means I can't do fizz maps. But it shouldn't be that bad. Ice Crash should be relatively identical. It is just a big area hit instead of a moving area. That's really it. In theory, it should have. With the amount of area that I have for Cyclone, I'd imagine Ice Crash would be almost the entire screen. So I'll give it a little test and see if it's any good. But people are doing this with Ice Crash, so just bear that in mind. I can't imagine the tree being any different because you're still scaling the same things. You're scaling from Fizz into Ellie and then whatever elemental damage you want to do. Mainly like elemental damage there. That's what you're scaling. You're simply converting any Fizz into cold for more scaling. But it's not a lot. It's more really to do with the extra conversion. At least I think it has conversion. I'm not entirely 100% sure, but I'm fairly confident it does. Mainly because I'm fairly confident that all cold skills have conversion. Or just all elemental damage types have conversion if it's coming from an attack. Could be wrong, but whatever. I've certainly seen it, so like the builds on PoE builds. So even if it's a slightly different setup, it's not majorly different.
You will never know my name.
Now, what does this has? Okay, so yeah, this has a lot of DPS. This whole build came about because I wanted to simply beat Method at something. I noticed that he had a relatively old guide on Debeon's Dirge when it first released, and he said it sucked. Ultimately, he was only able to get it to about 350k, which for him, yes, that's kind of a shitty amount of damage for him. So I can see why he said it, but I saw some potential, and there have been recent improvements that should easily have made it better. Of course, at the start it didn't. When I first got into maps, I was struggling past 250k, and I honestly doubted that I could beat the 350k goal. And it took me a lot of iterations to get this far. I've spent a lot of currency, a lot of wasted currency. And this, my character currently has about 6 or 7 exalts worth of gear, which yes is a lot, but that's mainly to do with min-maxing than anything else. You could do this on a lot lower budget. So the axe, we'll start at the items, how I acquired them, why I acquired them. So Debeon's Dirge is one of the cheapest 6 links you are ever going to find. Now you would think that the price of a 6 link would only go down past a certain point, which is the cost of a divine. Whatever a divine is in a league, that's how much it should cost in chaos. The thing is, although it's not my current axe, I bought about half a dozen axes for about 8c, which is less than a divine. The reason for that is because people just have them in their trade windows, in their like collection tab or their XXL tabs. You're just sitting there for like 10c, and nobody wants them. Okay, Debeon's Dirge is such a a underused unique that if people were smart, they would probably just vendor it, but they're not. Instead, they would just keep it in there for 10C. What it tells us, though, is that people are very lazy, and they cannot be bothered to vendor because they don't want to change up their divines for chaos. It's as simple as that. So yeah, it's absolutely 100% able to be bought for 8C, less than a divine, because people are lazy. And I don't see that
I'm the
changing
fisher,
unless this build
or
becomes
I
really big,
the bait.
which I'm hoping it is. Like, I had a lot of fun with this build, still have a lot of fun, I'm still continuing it. I'm level 90 now, and I don't intend to stop anytime soon. I know that I can push this higher, so that's exactly what I'm going to do. But in the meantime, I would love to see this be put on Reddit. I would love to see this in like a build of the week. I don't know how to achieve a build of the week. I don't know if we have to submit it or if people just say, hey, this is a really fun build, or maybe GGG like looks over Reddit or something, or the forums for a build guide and are like, hey, this looks really fun. Let's give this guy an email. Maybe he wants to be featured. I do. I definitely think it is build of the week worthy because this build was, in addition to pushing a unique as far as it could go, it was about learning experience. There are so many things I've learned from the game, the mechanics of the game, that I never knew for the first 1,000 hours that I played this game. That's what I'm at now. I'm over 1,000 hours, and the mechanics that have been here for years that I'd completely dismissed and ignored, and to solve problems that I encountered, I've learned this stuff. And a build of the week for me isn't good just because of the build. It's about how someone got to that position and how they were able to overcome obstacles. So I'm really proud of it, and um, I think people will have a lot of fun with it. So, um, yeah, so that was the Axe. That's the main build enabling unique. We then have, let's start at helmet and go down. So, helmet, you could go for Diabello, or a good rare helmet. My preferred method is a rare helmet. I did try Diabello, but it just doesn't have enough defenses to do red maps, and that's what I'm on at the moment. If you are in white and yellow maps, and you just consistently farm those because they're easy, then absolutely Diabello for the move speed and attack speed wouldn't be without it. But if you're trying to get into red maps, it's just not going to be possible. So yeah, end game, good rare helmet. Cyclone enchant, obviously, I'm still working on it. But good resist, very good life roll. That's pretty much it. That's pretty much all you need. I also have a mini lightning coil effect where Fizz is turned into lightning. So that's pretty fun. It's about 6%. It's not a lot, but it's certainly nice. So that's that. Oh yeah, you also want intelligence on it as well. The chess piece is very open. It doesn't matter really in the slightest what you use. Bronze Life for the same reason as Diabello. It's absolutely fantastic
Will be
for
captured.
yellow and white maps,
Stupid
but
beast.
any red maps, no, you got to put it away. I really wanted to keep it, but I just kept on getting one shot. Wasn't worth it. Packed it up. The idea would probably be Comb's Heart, but that would require you to have an almost perfect axe that is 6 socket and has the corruption that you want, which is either range or attack speed, or preferably both, which is what I have, but I don't have 6 sockets. So I'm using the third choice, which is a Carcass Jack, which is absolutely fine. Nothing wrong with a Carcass Jack. And is a good choice for 6 link if you can't get a 6 link corruption going. Aside from that, obviously a good rare chest would also be good. You could try going for like the minus mana cost of skills. Those are expensive, but it does free up a ring slot. Tombfist for the gloves. First time that I've really used tomb gloves. Didn't really think of them a lot, but I've definitely come to appreciate them a lot more. That dual socket is very open. You can put many things in it, and saved me a lot of chaos as I was like trying things out. In the end, I have a duel that has life and double elemental damage, fire and lightning, so that one of my rings can work at full potential. And a good set of Tombfists, you'd be looking at about 3 to 4C. That is because you want a corruption on there for elemental weakness. You can use a enfeeble though in the meantime, which is all of Tennessee. You can pick up a perfect Tombfist with enfeeble for Tennessee. Excuse me. Oh, now so much talking today. Okay, what else? Rare boots. Yep, rare boots for boots. I can't think of anything better. We don't get enough fencer charges to take advantage of Dark Rays. If we could, we would, but we can't. It's about 9 points, 9 passive points. The first passive points would be going to endurance charges anyway, and that takes up 3. Yeah, not a lot to say about that. So rare boots, 35%, and yeah, 35% move speed and life, res, int. Amulets. Rare amulet. I haven't come across any unique amulet that fits the bill. That may change, but nothing's jumped out at me. So at the moment, you want life, res, ele damage. It's another source of a single elemental damage type. So in this case, you might as well go cold if you get a rare jewel that has the other 2. And then we got to the rings. The taming is one of them. A guild member posted that in guild chat, and I loved it straight away. Oh, excuse me. A huge amount of elemental damage and a really nice amount of resist. It's a triple resist ring, and also a huge amount of elemental damage. So it's something like 90% 10% if you take advantage of like Ignite, Freeze, and Shock, which is why we need all 3 damage types. Obviously, this makes Elemental Reflect worse for us. Thing is, like, it's not going to brick you or anything. Like when I was on 1.6 mil, it basically reduced it down to 1.8 mil. It reduced it down to 1.35, something like that, which is fine. Like, so elemental equilibrium maps are fine to do. You just do slightly less damage. But it also gives us obviously a huge amount of elemental weapon damage. So my recommendation is that you quality it for that, which is what mine had. So I have 20% more, which is about 110, 115, something like that. And then Vivinsect was one to solve a particular problem of mine, which was when I started really doing high amount of mapping and the guardians would spawn on a regular basis. There was one which was I think it's the guardian who drops down a brand on the ground that I had to do a lot of research, personal research into, because it's not on the wiki. Basically what happens is you go into it and you die. It's really simple as that. The reason for that is it stops you having a mana pool, like at all. Like you have 0 mana, which is very interesting because it's not like no leech, it's not no regen, it is simply your mana becomes 0. So I had to figure out what, because I initially thought it was just silence. So I went out and bought a cold steel with immune to silence on it, and I still died. I was like, what's happening here? So I had to do multiple maps for it to bug out, so I could get the brand staying on the ground after I killed all the mobs, so I could go in and out of it to figure out what changed. And yeah, it really takes you out of the immersion, and it's yeah, it forced me to look at how I view game mechanics and how to deal with them. So I needed a way to cast all my stuff without mana, which is a lot harder than it sounds. Thankfully, Vivinsect has a nice ability where for every corrupted piece of item you're wearing, jewels do not count whether they are in the tree or in sockets, unfortunately, but regular armor pieces, they count. And yeah, basically you corrupt a load of stuff, like 2/3 of your gear, and it should make your cyclone cost 0. I also took the war cries are instant and free nodes on the tree, and that means that I can do left click without worrying. And again, I didn't know that existed before. Also didn't know that you could put war cries on left click. So that was new. And now I don't think I'm going to have a character who doesn't have war cries. If I'm like near Templar or Duelist or Marauder. No, I said that twice, didn't I? Marauder, Duelist, and the guy with the long neck. Templar. So yeah, that was that.
Everyone is simply using you.
At the same time that I got silence on the cold steel, I got a second cold steel with immune to corrupted blood. That also helps out quite a bit. And it has a nice veiled mod as well on 5th Insect. You don't have access to everything. It's a very limited mod pool, but it's probably the best way to get yourself chaos resistance. That's probably been a big deal for me, is chaos resistance. Only today have I been able to get positive resistance without a flask, and even with a flask it's only at 41. So it's yeah, slow going on this learning, but it is getting there. Another thing that I learned is the value of god powers. So I kept on dying to L, whatever his name is, like the guardian who does all of the poison and chaos. Kept on dying to him. So I had to figure out how to deal with that. And I found out that one of the nodes that I was already using could be upgraded to be immune to poison. So that was fun. I died once the first time after I use it, but then every other time after that I figured out the mechanics that I could dodge and the ones I could just ignore, and now I don't die to him. It's a complete shutdown of that guardian. So that's good. In fact, there isn't any guardians that I have trouble with at all anymore. Probably the biggest one is the ice one, because of the amount of potential shotgunning. That is an issue. And the very small area for Cyclone. Oh, pardon me. Okay. Lots of talking. The first video I did was an hour and 50 minutes, and it all was corrupted. So, oh god. So, yeah, I mean, along with just min-maxing this build in general, another of the reasons that I'm just loving this league, not because of the league mechanic, but just in general, from the new knowledge, is I am YOLOing corruptions on my gear so much more. I've done more corruptions on my gear than I have in the entire time that I've played beforehand. And that's been pretty fun. Scary in some instances, but yeah, it's actually good. Good when you get a good roll. Good roll. So yeah, that's the gearing. Let's just go over links quickly, and then we'll just do a bit of a wrap up. So at the moment, my current setup is Cyclone, Conquerfact, Fortify, Hypothermia, Elemental Damage with attacks, and Infused Channeling. I have 2 cast wind damage takens, one is 6, one is 10, although the 10 may even be going higher. So the first one is obviously Immortal Call, increased duration, pretty standard. Second one is Berserk and Blood Rage. I want this to only proc off of a rare mob, because I want to keep my max rage as much as possible. What else? Rallying Cry, Enduring Cry is part of Second Wind, so I have a pretty incredible 1.5 for cooldown time, and is my only sustain for like health. Really, I have some leech on the Aziri's Promise, as you can see, but that's it. Blood Rage gives me a tiny bit, but not enough for any sort of sustain. Then have Herald of Ice, Dash with Second Wind again, Hatred, that's in the Viv Insect, it gives a +5 to auras, Blood and Sand, and a Stone Golem. and the golem can be changed out to whatever your preference is. Let me give you a quick look at some stills. So we got DPS, just as proof that this is indeed that amount of damage. This is my skill tree. The cluster jewel is a pretty standard two-handed damage cluster, and then the medium is a, what is it? It's area of effect, huge amount of area, and then I've just got two jewels in that for elemental resist and life and damage. This is the Ascendancy. I picked up more damage at the bottom one first, then I did all of the rage, and then I did Warcry. In hindsight though, now that I know that I can instant cast on left click, I would probably go more damage, Warcry, and then rage. This is just a look at all of the uniques I think are worth your time. And anything else? No, that's pretty much it. We've got this jewelry tab, so this is actually what's going to be in the next video. I'm actually getting 3 whole tabs of 75 plus eye level jewelry. This includes rings, belts, amulets, jewels of all sorts. Yeah, all 75 and above. So that's going to be really fun, and I'm going to be mass IDing them. I'm going to see. I've got an interesting premise of making them all into 1C buyouts, IDing them, and then valuing them by the amount of spam that I get. Some of them are obviously going to be absolutely incredible. I've got some really good 80 level jewelry. Some of it is like shaper and stuff like that, which I know just the base is like 30 plus C. So we're going to get spammed, we're going to see that in the video, 3 whole tabs, we're going to see how it goes. So yeah, that's it. I want to thank you for watching and for listening. I really hope that you look into the build. It's very cheap to start off with. You'd get your main weapon plus your 6 link for 10C. If you're a new player, my suggestion, like, you will actually drop around 10C just in currency, but my suggestion is pay a tiny bit of money, upgrade one of your tabs to an advanced upgrade tab, put a buyout of 1C, and just put every piece of rare jewelry that you pick up, don't wear it, just put every piece of rare jewelry, belt, jewel into the 1C buyout as you're going through the axe, and you will get probably about 30 to 40C as you're going through the axe, because people will want those rings. If you're a new player, you're not going to know what they do, and sure, you'll probably be undercutting a lot of them, but there's also a lot of very specific stuff that people want that would be very hard to sell, but as you're leveling, just put it into the tab, cheap buyout, you'll get many chaos from it, 30 to 40, which is more than enough to start this build. So yes, the league is fun, the build is fun, give it a look, give it a try,